So today we're going to interview Gino, who was a member of Rogue Team. I'm going to talk to him about his experience fighting in Ukraine and everything about that. So just to get started, Gino, do you want to introduce yourself? What was your background before you came to Ukraine?
Well, I'm originally English,
Mhm.
became American, so I served in the US Army, but got out in 2015 and just been a civilian since then. And then when the war kicked off, I was like, time to get back in.
And I know you had a pretty atypical start to joining the US military.
What do you mean?
You said you joined when you were a bit older, or
You want to go there?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Can we go there? Is it okay?
Sure. Yeah, I joined later in life. I was 33 when I
Mhm.
joined the US military. Basically got my citizenship in the States and signed up a month after that.
What prompted you to join?
I think I was always fascinated by the military. My granddad was a tail gunner in the bombers going over Germany in the Second World War, and he used to tell me stories, and I think that just fascinated me as a boy.
Was the reality anything like the stories?
My reality is probably very different from him because obviously he was in the air and I've always been
Yeah.
on the ground. Yeah.
What about you then had your experience in the US military. Did you deploy at all?
I did,
Yeah.
yes, 8 months in Afghanistan.
I've heard from a lot of people that experience in Afghanistan is nothing like experience in Ukraine. Is that true for you?
The combat itself is, yeah, it's very different, but at the same time, just being on a team, being around
Mhm.
team guys, if my team had a lot of Marines on it, but
Mhm.
you would find that even though I was Army and they were Marines, there's still a lot of things you knew the same. You knew how to work together, you knew how to move as a team, communicate, and all these other things that are just sort of the basics of being an infantryman.
Mhm.
So yeah, although it's a different war, there are still principles and teamwork and dynamics
Yeah.
that work in both.
Mhm. Was in Ukraine, were you pretty much with everybody who had military experience previously?
As far as I remember, I think so. There was a
Mhm.
couple of guys that came here as civilians, but they had more experience than I do by now,
Mhm.
by the
Yeah.
time, I met them just from being in country in Ukraine. Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you came to Ukraine, what was the motivating factor for you to come over here?
I think one of the initial things that kicked it off for me is I was watching the news and they were telling a story about this little 12-year-old girl, Polina, who got killed with her family just trying to flee Kyiv. And I have two daughters myself, and just seeing her picture, I was like, that could be my daughter kind of mentality. And I just thought someone has to stop that. So it just to me seemed very clear cut, like good versus evil. I want to be with the good guys and
Yeah.
stop this.
After being here now, do you still think it's clear cut that it's good versus evil?
Yes. Yeah.
What makes you say that?
Because you just continue to see more and more war crimes committed by Russia. You continue to see more and more lies. It's just, like we had the hospital got hit with a missile just last week, children's hospital. And then the Russians turn around and talk about, oh, the Ukrainians
Yeah.
are at fault from their air defense when there's clear evidence and video and everything else that shows that, it was blatantly the Russians that did it.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, why would the Ukrainians want to harm their own hospital?
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Um, what you came here in 2022 or 2022?
Yeah, summer 2022.
Yeah. So pretty early on in the conflict.
It seems so now. At the
Yeah.
time, I felt like, oh my goodness, I'm so behind. I'm like
Yeah.
3 or 4 months behind everybody else.
Mhm.
And it seemed like it took forever to get here. But once I was, yeah. But now it seems like, yeah, that was the beginning of the
Yeah.
war.
Yeah. It feels like a lifetime ago. Sometimes now I'm like, wow, it was only 2 years ago. It feels like 10 years or 20 years. When you initially joined, so you ended up on Rogue Team. Can you say a bit about that team or how you came to be on that one?
Yeah, Rogue Team wasn't Rogue Team at first. When I,
Mhm.
when I joined it, the guys were still in Yavoriv at the training base there.
Yeah.
And the team was formed under a Ukrainian commander, and it went under his name. And then later on, he was no longer on the team, and the guys created Rogue Team. Phoenix, who was the leader at the time, he pretty much came up with the name and the logo and everything. So then it became Rogue Team. yeah, so I've been with them on and off since the beginning.
So you, on your first trip to Ukraine, how long did you stay?
The first time, I think it was 3.5 months.
What made you leave?
One of the major factors was winter.
I,
I just was like, I'm not staying for winter. See you guys.
given the winters here, I don't really blame you for that
Yeah.
decision. Yeah.
The team wasn't too operational in that first
Mhm.
winter either. We went to like language school and things like
Yeah.
that. But while I was gone, they then went on to go to Bakhmut and fight there, and they did some good work there
Yeah.
that I missed out on, unfortunately. But I know the guys did some good stuff there.
That was a tough battle that went on for a long time. So, but then you came back a second time. What motivated you to come back again?
I think once they got home, just knowing that the team was continuing to do things and you sort of have that FOMO, like I'm missing out.
Yeah.
And once you're on the team and ingrained in the team, it's like family. You just,
Yeah.
like, you know, I grew up with my family back home, but
Mhm.
you know, I make every effort to go visit them again and again, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so even with this, it's like the war's carrying on. Okay, I should be there. I should be with my team or supporting or doing something. So you just always have this pull, this draw that you belong there. And then also civilian life is just not as fulfilling or purposeful.
Yeah.
And for me personally, like chasing money doesn't do anything for me. I don't find any fulfillment in that.
There's certainly no money to be had.
Oh yeah, no. You spend all your money. Yeah.
Can you say more about that? That, you know, obviously as a soldier here, you are paid a salary. But every soldier tells me, well, yeah, we're paid, but the money just goes back into the team what we're doing. Why is that?
Well, because you pretty much kit yourself up.
Yeah.
So when I first got, I guess it's probably still the same now, you buy all your own gear.
Mhm.
All you're really issued is a weapon and ammo. Besides that, everything you have is your own. So yeah, even sometimes down to vehicles.
Yeah.
So there's some big expenses, and you know, the better equipped you want to be, the more you're going to have to pay.
How much do you think that you spent, if you have to estimate it?
Thousands. Yeah.
Yeah.
Between travel and my gear and everything else. Now I was lucky. I did have this podcast guy, Mr. Ballin, who actually sponsored me. I was working for him for a bit back in Texas. And he actually sponsors me the second time I went and was like, here's my credit card, go buy whatever you need.
Wow.
And he was a prior Navy SEAL himself, so he understood what was at stake, and he, you know, but they were still super kind and he didn't have to do that. But that was the second time. But even so, I still spent a small fortune just to be here.
Yeah, and you even got some help with flight costs and things
And
as well.
yeah, protect a volunteer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Definitely helped me.
No, but like it's just all of the kids. I think when I first talked to people coming over here who are from the US Army or Marines, they were just shocked that they, you know, they're used to being issued everything and suddenly you get here. And if you do get it, it's questionable quality. It might be something that is years old as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you're relying on what the Ukrainians going to give you, yeah, you'll be like decked out like it's World War II or something.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest thing that surprised you when you came to Ukraine? Is there anything that just shocked you that you weren't prepared for?
I think for me, some of it was just seeing how other foreigners behave. And I don't know whether we want to talk about that or not.
Yeah, we can talk about it.
But honestly, the thing that shocked me was the first few months, the first time I was here, there was a good period where I felt more threatened by Westerners than I did actual Russians, if that makes sense, because of the way it just drew out all the crazies. There was not much, there weren't many checks, there wasn't much background, you know, checks going on. So just like everybody slipped through the radar, was here for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Whatever reason they had to be here, and it just drew a lot of crazies in. And so you just saw a lot of fighting, like physical fighting, verbal, you know, just all kinds of team dynamics would play out because you just got all these different personalities from all over the world, men with big egos and everything else, you know.
One thing I found is that the bigger egos tend to come on the lesser qualified people as well too. That when you meet people who are really, their skills are really in demand here and you're making, there's no ego at all.
I would say, like, for example, my team leader, Super Dave, the most chill, quiet, humble,
Yeah,
dude you can meet, but he's,
but he's a real deal. Yeah.
but he's the real deal. And that, I think like the proper tier one operator type guys, they're the quiet ones.
Yeah.
They're not the ones making the noise. They're not saying, look at me. They're not doing podcasts.
Yeah. Um, that's one thing that I've had the experience of too, is whenever I've had somebody contact us and be rude, be really demanding, some of them are just blatantly, you've seen some that are just
Yeah.
blatantly disrespectful. Every time I contact a team leader about that, that person is also causing problems in the front in some way. They've got
believe it.
unsafe behavior. It's 100% match with that. Versus the people who are really an asset here are extremely polite and respectful, and will help you in anything. It's one or the other, basically.
Absolutely.
What's some of the behavior that you have seen? Is there anything you want to, maybe any story you want to share of something you saw like, oh, I can't believe this happened? You don't have to name any names.
I got a few, I know. I'm trying to see, can I tell a story without saying a name?
Yes.
So there's one guy that was on my team the first time.
Mhm.
Fun guy, became like my best friend, like love the guy. Him and one of the other Swedish guys were wrestling in the street and pretty much, drunk wrestling.
Yeah.
Got handcuffed. Swede runs away, and then my other boy, he had handcuff keys on him. So he undid the handcuff keys and ran away also. But it's like, who has handcuff
Who
keys?
goes anywhere with handcuff keys?
And really, that was just the start of it. There's like 10 more stories we could talk about with him. And so here's another funny one. In the restaurants here, people will get up and go outside and smoke.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen it, right? In the States, it'd be very weird to get up, like the whole table, get up, go outside, because they'd be like worried you're not going to pay the bill or something.
Yeah.
But here it's very common. So we were at a bar in Zaporizhia, and this whole table gets up and leaves. And we thought, oh, they're gone. And there was all these drinks on the table. So same guy goes up to the table, takes a bottle of whiskey and a couple of Cokes and stuff, and like takes it back. And we just, and it was all on camera, and it all came out, and it's like, oh, you guys were stealing. It's like, no, we didn't realize,
Yeah. Yeah. Is it stealing or is it stupidity? Basically.
Right. So there's always funny little things like that. And then same guy again, drunk, wanting to wrestle. And we had a really big guy on our team, Moose, and Moose is very stoic, and he's like, don't, I was trying to say it without cussing, but like get the F off of me. And he wouldn't listen. He just wanted to wrestle. So Moose, bam, just smacks him once in the face, knocks him out cold. And it was like at this coffee bar, like out on the patio, and everybody's just like in shock, like what just happened? He picks him up, puts him on his shoulder, throws him back in the car, like, Gino, we're leaving. Oh, okay.
Okay. What are you gonna say to that?
Yeah. So I don't know. There's funny stories like that. But yeah, there just seemed to be so much drama and nonsense in between, like actual doing good things there.
Yeah, I've dealt with the same, and I think everybody has in Ukraine actually. Sometimes like, hey, with your right hand you're fighting the Russians, and with your left hand you are trying to control the people who claim to be on your own side, but whose behavior is just destructive. Why do you think it's like that here?
Because you're piecing together military units without going through, the rigorous background check for one, and then training together over a long period of time, forming units. There isn't the same rank structure here. It was very loose, which I've always despised the rank structure back home because it just empowers bullies. But the problem here is it's almost the opposite. There's a lack of it, so then it's really hard to keep guys in tow, especially if they're foreigners, because they sort of know you can leave. I'm not. You don't control me quite the same as when you're in your military back home. So you get a lot more autonomy and a lot more leeway to really be a shitbag. If that's who you are, you can get away with it a lot more. So then it really comes down to the teams sort of regulate themselves. And I've seen this play out too, where there's been guys that just don't belong, not up to par for whatever reason. And the team will sort of turn against them and find a way to remove them.
For the safety of everybody.
Yeah.
I think one thing that's interesting here too is, the barrier to entry to get to Ukraine is pretty low. It's not, you can just fly to Poland quite easily, take a train across it. It's actually not hard to get here, which means that you have people, entering war zones who might never have any experience being in one before. And that was the thing that shocked me when I first came here, that there's a lot of people who just decided hey, I'm
Just gonna
no
show up.
experience, but I will just show up.
Yeah.
For better or worse, that's not work. So. I know, in your second tour in Ukraine, you were injured,
No, that was my third.
or your third time, okay. Third time you got injured, okay. Can you explain what happened to you?
Yeah, we were sent in to basically reinforce the trench.
Mhm.
It was a small outpost, like there's, 8 Ukrainian guys in this U-shaped trench. It was an exposed position that was sort of forward
Mhm.
of the line, if you will. With just a narrow tree line from them to the Russian front. And it wasn't mined, I guess, or anything. So the Russians could just sneak all the way up under the
Mhm.
cover of that tree line. And so we infield overnight. That in itself was a bit of a nightmare. There was one road in and out, kind of lost each other because we had 3 different vehicles. The Ukrainian drivers were scared to take us there because the night before, the vehicle got, hit by artillery, killed a couple of guys. So they were scared to go in, dropped us off early, and just waiting forever, trying to find each other. All night affair trying to get to this position because it was like a 3 or 4 kilometer hike in.
Mhm.
And so we finally get there, but it's just, sunrise,
Mhm.
dawn, lights coming up. So I don't know why, I just wasn't really thinking too much of it. I just thought, oh, I'm just relieved to be here. I go to the bathroom and whatever else, just not thinking much and handing out M&Ms, just like his breakfast to a couple of guys, and I'm on the left side with my buddy Tommy and Missouri, and all of a sudden Tommy just lets rip on the machine gun, and he made me jump. I'm like,
Yeah.
what are you doing, bro? Like about to scold him kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, there was dude just like crawling up. And he's like, I just put my crosshairs on his head and pulled the trigger. And after that, it just kicked off. That was it. Just bang, 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 like back and forth. And so they were literally within 20 meters of us.
Wow.
They'd snuck up through through the night. And then I guess they were trying to crawl up right on us. Fortunately, Tommy was paying attention.
Mhm.
And so it kicked off, and just the rest of the day, it was just like waves, if you will.
Mhm.
Maybe like a wave of troops, then a wave of artillery, then a wave of troops, and then maybe kamikaze drones. And then sort of towards the very end of the day, there was even like 3 tanks that were shooting at our position, and their rounds were like deadly accurate. They were like landing on the roof of the bunker I was in. But I was kind of on the left side, and I was holding the left side with a couple of guys, and they'd gone. Oh, that was it. I think it was a kamikaze drone, so it landed like right in front of me, and the guy on my left, he took a bit to his neck, so he went back inside to like make sure he wasn't like
Mhm.
in serious trouble or whatever. And so I was just left by myself, sort of on the outside, and then everyone else was still under the cover.
Mhm.
And so there's sort of grenades going off, there's machine gun fire sort of chopping over my head. I'm like, man, this is getting close. And then so they sort of call me back under to get under shelter too. And I'm like, all right, I'm good with that. Because when you got someone next to you, you got all the confidence in the world. But when you feel like you're really on your own, you're like, okay, this don't feel good. So I'm like, yeah, I'm quite happy to go underneath right now. So I go back under the cover, and as soon as I do, there's just kind of like this window outlet, and the mud was just curved in.
Mhm.
And it's funny because earlier in the day when I'd seen it, I'd been like, oh, if a grenade lands there, it's just going to roll right in. And sure enough, for whatever reason, right when I walked inside, that's when a grenade rolled right in and landed next to me, and shrapnel through my left leg, fractured my tibia and stuff like that. And so I had to get, somehow managed to get to the back of the trench.
Mhm.
And then Tommy put the tourniquet on me, packed my wounds, stopped the bleeding, and just kind of pretty much saved my life. Like I was going into shock because I think from the loss of blood. And so I just was pretty helpless and just kind of lying there, like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm done, you know. And so Tommy really came through again, and I pretty much just had to lie there, no pain meds, and honestly, the tourniquet hurts more than the wounds itself.
Mhm.
It's not fun. And so the good thing, we didn't have a medic, but Tommy had been training enough on medical stuff to know what he was doing. And I had to stay there 12 hours until nightfall, until another team could extract us. So if you have a tourniquet for 12 hours, you're going to lose your leg,
Yeah.
right? So Tommy knew enough to also get the tourniquet off me.
Mhm.
At first, he loosened it; it was bleeding too much, and he tightened it again. And I was like screaming at him, "Bro, look, take that thing off!" But he wouldn't. And then he came back like an hour later or whatever, and he was able to loosen it and actually get the tourniquet off. The bleeding stopped, so he'd stabilized me. And then we just had to wait, and I knew it wouldn't be till nightfall till we could get a team in. I was just listening to the you know, wave after wave coming in and the guys fighting it out. And I was sure that they were going to run out of ammo. And then once they'd have run out of ammo, then the Russians would have just overrun the position. They would have chucked a couple of grenades in the bunker where I was and come in and finish me off, kind of thing. So I was just sort of waiting. At some point they're going to come in and get executed, kind of thing. But somehow the guys just lasted. They didn't quit fighting and they didn't run out of ammo. Although it came close, I think, by the end of the day. And then once darkness came, the Russians stopped attacking. Like, we do have night vision. I'm pretty sure none of them would have. And so they stopped. And then it was like, I still had to wait like another 6 hours for another team, 50-50 team.
Yeah.
They came in and when I saw them come through the door, I was like, oh my goodness, these are like angels from heaven. Like, they're all decked out in all their gear. And they just, I was just like, oh my, you're like my heroes right now. And so they had to drag me the 3 or 4 kilometers back to the road. And that in itself was a bit of a nightmare. But everybody was, screaming at each other because everyone's worried about the drones are going to see us.
Yeah.
And either the drones will get you or the artillery. So extraction's super dangerous as well because you're just out in the open. You're not in a bunker, you're exposed. So they would get like 100 meters, put me down, and then it's like next four guys, and everyone's just screaming at each other like, come on, let's go, we've got to keep moving. And so finally they get me to the road, which took forever. Everybody's just smoke, and then the APC came down the road, and like everybody jumps out the way. It's like flying towards us. And like, I'm just stuck in the stretcher. Don't forget me, guys. I don't want to get run over. So they drag me off the road too, and then finally stick me in it, and that got me out there to safety.
Yeah, and there is a video of your extraction as well, although given it's at night, you can't really see too much, but you can hear the audio. I didn't, when I first saw this video, I had no idea it was you, actually, because 50-50 just told me this is their video going to get a soldier.
I didn't even know it was online, to be honest, till somebody else sent it to me. So
yeah. How does it feel, actually? Because obviously you experience that in the moment, but now later there's a video public of your extraction.
My most vulnerable moment.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, oh shit, how bad does this make me look? Because it was in agony. Mostly I was just so drained.
Yeah.
Like, because they're telling me like you got to go up the stairs, and then once you're up, there's like a real narrow trench, and it's like, just get to the very end of that, and then we've got you on the stretcher, which sounds very easy and under normal circumstances. Like, I can carry my body weight, no problem. But after just being drained, hadn't eaten, hadn't drunk all day, just been bleeding out and all the rest of it, I just had no energy. And so just trying to get up those stairs and down along that track, I was at the point of exhaustion. So it was really difficult. So it's funny to listen to the audio and remember how it physically felt.
Yeah.
Because none of that really comes across, of course, when you're just watching or listening to the video. But
this was if you hear the audio from that extraction, everyone sounds quite calm, and you're not indicating anyone just how severely you're injured. You're just factually telling them what needs to happen. It's amazing just how calm it is given severity.
And I think that's most guys that are professionals that have been in this world. That's how they're gonna behave. It's the ones that are screaming and whatever. I don't know. They don't know what they're doing. I don't know. It's just that's what you're supposed to do. Everybody's just like, I've been trained to do this, so I just do it, and it's very matter of a fact. And it's not all this screaming and craziness. Because it's funny, because like even yesterday I was watching the Trump video, right, where he gets shot in the air, or any kind of video like that, and all you hear is everybody screaming and yelling and going crazy. And like, I'm like, we don't do that in the military. You just don't do that. You're taking all kinds of incoming and craziness, but nobody's screaming and yelling about it. You're just like getting on with the job.
Yeah, you have to save money. Have you ever had a chance to talk to Tommy about how it feels for you that, he saved your life? I mean, twice, essentially, here.
So I guess you don't know Tommy's story then.
I don't.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll fill you in. So me and Tommy did stay in touch. He actually got shot in the arm the same day. So he ended up in the bunker hanging out with me a little bit. And then we ended up in the hospital. We went through the hospital process together and went to Kharkiv. And sometimes I look back on that and I sort of regret I didn't. We did spend time, we did talk, but after a while we sort of, was doing his thing and I was just recovering, and my girlfriend at the time came to see me.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, we weren't hanging out as much right at the very end, but I got sent to Germany because my wounds were bad enough to be accepted there to get care, whereas Tommy just had the gunshot wound in his devil dog tattoo, which he was super proud of, but that's where he got shot. So he went back to the team to finish his recovery. I flew home to America Thanksgiving Day, and I got a call from Super Dave that night, like 2 o'clock in the morning. He's like, "Hey, I got bad news for you, but Tommy was killed in a car crash." So, yeah, that's what Tommy's story is.
That's really awful.
Yeah.
I actually, now that I had this, I think of piece together, I remember hearing about that car crash, and it's really tragic. When you went to Germany, and I know you said you've gotten excellent care there. What's it like though to get extracted off from the front line here, go to the Ukrainian hospital, and then all over the land for treatment?
I don't recommend the ambulance ride. It's a 37-hour journey from Kharkiv to Landstuhl, and took them 50 hours because they would stop every 2 hours for a break. So that was miserable. The Weatherman Foundation are the ones who got me out, and honestly, I think it was a bunch of paperwork and
a lot of paperwork,
bureaucracy, and I didn't have to deal with any of it, thank goodness. And being in the Kharkiv hospitals, it's hard because no one speaks English. We kind of got lucky, me and Tommy, because there was one doctor who spoke English to us, so he sort of helped me understand, or help us understand what was going on. But a lot of times you really don't. And when you're injured and stuff, that's you're like, how bad is it? Like, what's going on? What do I need? You don't.
That's really scary when you don't know your own condition.
And so, but they were great. Like the doctors and nurses there. It's obviously a lot more basic than what we used to in Western facilities, but they do an amazing job. They work nonstop. Like my doctor, his name was Maxime, and I felt like he was just working every day. Like I was like, "Bro, do you ever get a break?" Like they were working their asses off. They really were. So I felt for them on that. But overall, great people. The other soldiers that we met, like we shared a room, the ward with, great guys. Got all the respect in the world for the Ukrainian guys that are on the front line, because we just go in, do our mission, few days in and out. Those guys are there day after day, month after month, just waiting to be slaughtered almost. Like just I got a lot of respect for those guys.
They deserve it.
They really do.
So no, you went to Landstuhl, you later went home to the US. So one question a lot of people have is that, especially for Americans, we have a famously expensive healthcare system. If you're injured in Ukraine, are you able to get treatment in the US?
So I was really worried about that. And so I thought I was just going to stay at Landstuhl forever until I can walk again, kind of thing. And then it got to the point I was like, all right, I'm ready to go home. But I was still unsure when I was going home, would I get any care or not? And I wasn't sure how bad it was. Fortunately, they did some surgery in Landstuhl, took out the shrapnel that needed to come out, and I just sort of accepted that whatever else is there, I guess that's it. I don't need more surgery. So once I got home, I had a friend, Shelley, who's a physical therapist, and she basically did a lot of physical therapy for me at a reasonable rate to help me out. And then after a little while, I was like, well, let me just go to the VA and see what they say. Maybe they'll help me out. And I went, and they really didn't give me any problems. And I know a lot of people complain about the VA, but honestly, they were really good to me. Now, their scheduling is kind of off. Like I got 6 weeks of physical therapy and it was great. And then right at the end, she was like, "Oh, I can't see you again for like another 3 months
Yeah.
or something." I was like, okay. So there's, there's some stuff like that. But otherwise, yeah, they didn't give me any headaches,
Mhm.
no problems, and I felt lucky. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Because I think one question that I've heard a lot from people is, a lot of times people will get injuries here that are lifelong injuries. They're going to need a lot of rehabilitative care,
Sure.
or 10 years from now, it's going to still be haunting you or maybe get worse. And the question is, well, what happens to people at that stage?
Yeah. For me, I'm already under the VA, so
Yeah.
they're just like, "Oh, you've got something you need help with. You're within our system. We're going to help you."
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Now, if it was a lot worse, I don't know. Maybe it's a different
Mhm.
story, but I just needed some physical therapy.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I know, for quite a lot of people who get hurt in Ukraine, with the therapy is something that they sometimes get, sometimes don't get. It's tough, and especially
Yeah.
the demand here for
I think it
It's tough.
depends probably where you are in the States too.
Yes, yes. Um, I know, so once you went back, I know you did some media interviews, mainly on behalf of the Weatherman Foundation, which frankly works miracles to help people over here. And after that, your identity kind of got revealed everywhere. What was it like to go through that?
It was a little bit frustrating, but I sort of accepted it. I talked to the Weatherman Foundation about it before I did it, and
Mhm.
they sort of gave me some reassurances about it. And so yeah, after that, once my name was out, I was just like, all right, the gloves are off, which is why I'll do interviews like this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, not afraid to show my face and speak
Mhm.
up. Like my fighting days are probably done.
Mhm.
So, you know, just using my voice to support the cause now is kind of more my goal, I guess.
Why do you think that's important to do?
Because there's so much fake stuff that's
Yeah.
out there, like we were talking about earlier. So there has to be constant truth
Yeah.
fighting against all these lies. And yeah, it's as much a propaganda war as it is a physical war in a
Yeah.
sense, because it's about how people think, their ideologies, etc., etc. So you're always fighting, you know, collective thinking, and so
Mhm.
you've got to have the positive voices or the Ukrainian voices or the pro-Ukrainian voices speaking up just as much to outdo all the negative voices and the lies and the Russian voices.
Yeah. One common charge that you all have fighting here is that you're mercenaries. Do you agree with that?
No, because we are under the Ukrainian military, so I think anyone who comes here, serves in the Legion is definitely not a mercenary. You are just a foreigner in the Ukrainian military.
Yeah, you sign a contract, you earn the
Yeah.
same wage,
Yeah.
same salary.
Yeah.
So one thing I've found interesting is, almost all the foreign fighters here who have gained a high public profile. Some of them it's been determined later this person's actually, faking being a part of the war. Or really, well, they were in the army, but they didn't go on missions. There's a lot of questions about that. And then there's the silent majority who are just doing their work. For those of you who are fighting, how does it feel to see just a mismatch between what's happening here and what's happening in the public sphere?
I think what it comes back to is stuff like that. I don't think anyone necessarily cares about the glory,
Yeah,
but you care more about, oh, are they just taking money? At
Yeah.
least that's how I think of it. I'm like, oh, they're just doing that to raise funds that they then pocket or steal or
Yeah.
are not using towards the war effort. And then
Yeah.
then when that's found out, it just makes everybody look bad. So then nobody wants to donate to anything.
yeah,
And so then they're actually hurting the whole cause, and you're just like, F those guys.
yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's not just the money they take themselves, but it makes everyone less likely to support.
Which is why we need good people we can trust
Yes.
to support
Yeah.
that do good things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it's hard though, too, because like even for
Yeah.
us to sort out, because one difficulty is, we're not on missions with you. There's some things that, for example, can never be shared with an NGO. There's OPSEC restrictions and what we can know. And so we're just trying to make the best decisions we've got with the information we can get, which is never 100% of what's happening.
Yeah, of course.
Um, what do you think if people do want to support the war in Ukraine now? What would be the biggest things they could do that can actually help the war?
Well, it still is a grassroots
Yeah,
war, right? It still does rely on these funds from individuals to individuals almost,
Yeah.
or to teams at the very least. So, and that's the problem. It's like weeding out the legit from the
Yeah.
fakers because they do exist. But for the most part, hopefully there's enough stuff out there from legit people that it far outweighs the corruption
Yeah.
than the ones that are just here to pocket it for themselves.
Mhm.
And I think at this point too, like it's a couple years in, right? Like
Yeah.
we've weeded out a lot
we have,
of the bad
yeah.
apples, right?
Yeah, I think, every time something gets exposed, it is bad, but it's also, it's good in a way to have that come up so that people are no longer supporting something that's not. helping.
Exactly, yeah. But then there's organizations like yours, right?
Yeah,
That people can support, right?
oh, definitely. And the thing, we check people out pretty extensively. Sometimes when we get a little angry of how much we check. If you were gonna give somebody a guide, how do you tell who is legit or not in Ukraine? Like what?
Very difficult.
Yeah,
It can be very difficult because I've seen guys that claim to be one thing, X, Y,
Yeah.
and Z, DD-214 and all the rest of it. And then later on down the road, they faked it.
Yeah.
Or they fake their stories, or it's very difficult. Unless like it's, you get in the field and they say they can do X, Y, and Z and they clearly cannot, then that's
Yeah.
a different story. But yeah, it can be very difficult.
it can be, there's a lot of fake records. And I think the difficulty too is, when we've been checking out, I know at this point what an American military record looks, and I can sometimes spot fake. But for every country, you really need somebody who is in that country's military to be able to spot what the fake record is, because they know exactly how things should be phrased and what it should look like. And that can be hard to find to check for everything. I think that's some of the difficulty that the International Legion has had of how do you check out records from dozens of different
So-
countries.
Yeah. People show up, it's very difficult. They're here. How do you know
Yeah.
it?
And sometimes even the records are real, but maybe their skills are not up to par for
True.
various reasons.
True.
Is, so you think your fighting days are done? Why do you say that?
Just because I got hurt, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah,
Mhm.
for the most part.
Yeah, it's a serious injury. So I know at Landstuhl, you guys basically had, a symphony of people with serious injuries that were there. Are you pretty supportive of each other and in touch with each other after going through all that?
I made some good friends
Mhm.
there, mostly guys from Chosen Company
Yeah.
that obviously I've never been part of.
Mhm.
But all the guys that were injured there were Chosen guys.
We had a lot of injuries.
So they always seem to be getting hurt. So
Mhm.
it was nice to bond with them. And yeah, like Dirty P, for example,
Yeah,
we made friends and he
yeah,
was
you both had grenade blasts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so he was like my drinking buddy at lunch, that kind of thing. Yeah. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think so. When you're in that together, you've been through the same thing. You're a very small
Yeah,
group. There's not that many people that you're going to find in the world that can say they've done the same. Or
yeah. I mean, how many people are gonna say, hey, grenade exploded on me and I'm still here?
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. In Ukraine. Yeah.
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 So I know you're working on filming a documentary. You're thinking of filming one now. What motivates you to do that?
Kind of what we touched on with just having a voice
Yeah.
and speaking some truth and positivity and supporting the cause in a creative way.
Yeah,
At heart, I'm a creator and I like creative things.
yeah,
Art. I'm always doing creative things back home. So I just look at it as a good way of bringing the two together, like the military with creativity. I have access to people and units
yeah.
that regular filmmakers do not.
They know you and they trust you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have open doors to be able to do this. If I can get the funding together,
Mhm.
then I can do something pretty rare and different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be great. What are some things that you, because I'm in a unique position here where I have the privilege of knowing a lot of you guys who are not in the public eye, so I see you behind that. Um, what are some things that you wish the public knew about your teammates and people that you brought here?
Honestly, that is one of the biggest things I kind of want to do documentary is to show these guys are absolute heroes to me.
Yeah.
I don't even count myself on the same level.
Mhm.
Like the guys that fought all day when I'm just bleeding out, the guys
Yeah.
that came into the trench, pulled me out, dragged me 3-4 kilometers.
Yeah.
These kind of guys, they're absolute heroes, but nobody knows their names, their
Yeah.
faces, the things they're doing on a daily basis. That was just one day for me.
Yeah.
But they're doing stuff like that all the time.
Yeah.
They got countless more stories than me, done way more things than I have. And so I consider myself just a witness
Yeah.
of these things. And I kind of just want to be able to share that
Yeah.
with the world because I want these guys to get the recognition
Mhm.
that they deserve too. Like even for example, like the one guy that was on the team, he just went back to the States, has been here since the beginning of the war, civilian guy,
Yeah.
just came over right at the beginning, got on a team, worked different teams, ended up on road team with us.
Mhm.
And, you know, he's not a big dude. He's
Yeah.
not, you know, if you just saw him walking down the street, you wouldn't have a clue. But he has done all kinds of missions,
Yeah.
experiences, and lost a lot of buddies here and been through all kinds of hell here. And I'm just like, that guy he's not, when he goes home, he wasn't prior military, so he doesn't
Yeah.
even have a VA
Yeah.
like I do, or any benefits or anything military related. He just goes home to silence.
And I've worked with you, and that's a tough position, actually, of when they don't have the VA, they get no support there, but they are a veteran, you know, they fought in
100%.
conflict.
He's done way more than I have done.
Yeah.
And so I respect the hell out of him and all the guys like him. And like I said, Super Dave and all the other guys on my team. I'm just like, they're just legends, you know?
Yeah.
But nobody knows these legends.
This has been a difficulty I've had the entire time too. I'm just, you know, because a lot of them, they don't want to have their identities in the public. Do you want to say why do foreign fighters want to stay anonymous? What's the motivation there?
Part of it is that's just their personality.
Yeah.
Like, what do they gain by just having their name out there?
Mhm.
You know, they're not trying to get anyone's money. They don't need anyone else's like praise.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it's just personality. They just don't need it, so they don't seek it.
Yeah.
Also it's just part of being a professional in the military. Like it's just secrecy is just built in, right?
Yeah.
And so you just maintain that secrecy no matter what.
Yeah. One thing that I've learned with working with you guys is I think you define trust differently. That it's generally something, you know, if a civilian says they trust you, it means a different thing than you guys saying you trust something, because it means really you trust that with your life, like literally do that. And it's very hard to get to that level too. And so for anything going public, it's like you really have to trust whatever source you're using to.
That is very true.
So on Rogue Team, I know one thing we just discussed before, this is a really professional team in Ukraine that's got a good reputation.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you want to say more like what's unique about them?
I'm just gonna keep singing Dave's praises. Honestly.
Because of Dave.
Honestly, because he's the leader.
Yeah.
That's really molded it into what it is now.
Yeah.
And I've just seen it just be very level-headed, just professional guys, just solid, no drama, no fighting, just getting on with the job, everyone getting along. And you can't beat it. And I love it because when I was in the US military, there was so many things I hated. Like all the garrison bullshit, the rank system, all the stuff. And with Rogue Team, to me, it's much like I was not special forces, I'm not pretending I was, but I deployed with those guys.
Yeah.
And so I saw how they operated and I saw how we operated as regular infantry side by side in the same base. But they had one set of rules and we had another set of rules, which were way stricter, right? Like we'd get in trouble with just having the wrong color socks on, that kind of thing, right? Whereas they're just wearing t-shirts and ball caps to go out to a firefight, you know, things like that, you know? So coming here to Ukraine, being on Rogue Team, it's like, oh, we get those rules now.
Yeah.
We get to play by like the SF rules.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot more autonomy. People say it's not like a video game. but in some ways it is, because it's like build your own class, like all your own gear, customize it, spray paint it, all the rest of it, you know, like it's, you know, anyone who's been in the military, it's to some degree, it's your dream, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's autonomy and without the garrison bullshit, without having to salute or stand at parade rest or call anybody sir or kiss ass to people that you don't respect. There's none of that. It's all out the window. And so yeah, being part of road team, yeah, it's to me it's like how the military should be. But it only works if you got mature guys who can handle their business and not act like the fool. You know?
I think one tough thing is every single team that I know of in Ukraine has at some point had to address somebody acting like fool. Is there a way to vet properly and know and keep that kind of behavior out, or is it really just it's impossible to do entirely?
Yeah, it is, because all you, yeah, I don't know how you reach 100% unless you can get references of 100 people that know this person before they show, but nobody's got the time to really do the research to really know.
You know, we do PVs with something called scholarships for grunts, which I find funny. You know, I'm a law professor in my day job, and essentially what we are is we're giving people scholarships in order to be effective volunteers here. And one of the things we require is the referral or the reference. But it's still challenging because sometimes you can ask 10 people and get 10 extremely different opinions on one person. That's especially true, you know, after missions here. You might talk to 5 people who are on it, and they will tell you completely different things that happen. And I don't mean that any of them are lying or any of it's untrue, but it's just they had completely different experiences of the same thing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I know, like, even when I was in the bunker getting hurt, my experience on the left side of the bunker, completely different from the guys on the right side of the bunker.
Yeah.
And we're in the same fight.
Yeah, because sometimes you can say like, hey, this person's a hero, and then somebody else says, no, he made a mistake. And both of those things might be completely true. And then not being there, it's like, well, how do you even begin to judge what is?
Yeah.
Earlier on, you mentioned that, you know, you've seen the Russians do some pretty horrific things here. How do you cope with that when you see that while you're fighting as well?
I haven't necessarily witnessed it in person while fighting. I see the news the same as everybody else. I see the missile strikes here. I've seen, you know, wake up, you know, there's a building gone a block away from where I am, kind of thing, that kind of stuff. And then obviously just talking to Ukrainians, hearing their stories. It's tricky because, you know, we're talking about being professional, you're just doing your job. So you try to somewhat keep your emotions out of it. I don't necessarily hate Russia. I do hate what they're doing. I think it's completely wrong and evil and vile, but it doesn't, you know, there's always good people and there's always bad people, or whatever group you want to say, or nationality. It doesn't. So I think it's the same with Russians, right? Like, sure, collectively, absolutely hate what they're doing. It's completely wrong, has to be stopped. But I don't necessarily have any hatred built up inside of me. So now maybe that, you know, could change if I was here long enough. For some guys, sure, they get that way, but you know, even with the guy that threw the grenade at me, I don't feel any sort of like, oh man, I want to kill that guy, or any hatred. I'm just like, he was doing what he thought he needed to do, and we were there to stop him.
Well, I didn't think of it. And so you're not hating the guy who threw the grenade at you and blew you up.
Yeah, no. The whole time I was in that trench, I didn't really have any hatred in my heart. Even when I was in Afghanistan and we were fighting there, I don't remember ever being like, oh, I hate these people. I want to kill them. Like, I don't think soldiering is actually about killing. You know, it's actually about sacrifice and service. And so for me, that's how I think of, or why I became a soldier, was to serve, and if anything, identify with sacrifice, not with the taking of life. You know, and so and other guys may have completely different perspective on. I'm just giving you me. By nature, I have to live a civilian life and continue to live. My life isn't war 24/7. And I don't want to live my life full of hate and bitterness. I try to live a life of peace. And my war fighting is not really about hurting or killing. It's actually about defending and sacrifice and service, you know? So it's perspective, I guess.
Can you say more about that? What What motivated you to be a soldier in general?
So I used to do a lot of actually kids and youth ministry back in the
Mhm.
States. I used to build skate parks and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And so I just got to a point where I felt like those days were done for me and I needed to do something different. And like I said, money didn't really motivate
Yeah.
me. So there wasn't really a career that I wanted to get into. I don't have a degree. So there wasn't anything for me to fall back on.
Mhm.
Construction's always been my thing. So, but I didn't necessarily want to do that 24/7 either. And so the military at the time appealed to me because it was just sort of this balance between,
Mhm.
I had a family at the time, wife and two kids. So it's like,
Mhm.
oh, I can get a paycheck and benefits and all the regular things that everybody else gets a job for.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's some form of service.
Yeah.
And I'd just become a citizen. So
Mhm.
it all sort of tied together.
Mhm. Mhm. Um, I've heard that from a lot of people, yeah, that it's new. It's not about what you're fighting, but it's what is behind you that you're protecting, which is why you're doing what you're doing. However, you have to do some difficult things. You have to be violent. You, in many cases, have to kill. Is, is that something that is difficult, or is it something that you learn to accept over time?
Again, it's just, you just do without too
Yeah.
much emotion at the
Mhm.
time. Now, I have seen where guys have broken down afterwards and really
Mhm.
struggled with PTSD
Yeah.
and depression and all kinds of things later on. So again, it really just depends what you're
Yeah.
processing in your mind after the fact. If you feel
Mhm.
justified in what you did, or you feel like what you did was wrong for
Yeah.
some reason. Because I've seen that with a friend of mine that has really struggled because he killed like what he thinks was a teenager,
Mhm.
but he was justified in the
Yeah.
killing at the time. Um, but for him, he still struggles with it.
Yeah.
So circumstances, everything, I guess.
It's very easy to judge when you have, hindsight and can look back, and as opposed to in the moment when we have to make really difficult decisions.
Yeah.
Um, do you think, so I know, one thing that everybody has said, if they fought in Iraq and Afghanistan with the US versus Ukraine, is that, one difference here is that we know here what the purpose is, and that we know, that this war is not one that everybody, that Ukraine chose, that it's forced upon them. Does that affect then how you view the actions you take in this war? Does that question make any sense?
Say it one more time.
Okay,
Reframe it.
so in Iraq and Afghanistan, there's a
Yeah.
lot of veterans now who struggle with the moral injury of thinking, was
Oh.
the violence they portrayed, was this actually even necessary? What was the purpose of us being there? I think for a lot of us, myself included, I think we question as a country what we were doing. In Ukraine, though, there is no question in terms of, is this war necessary? I think we know that it is. Does that affect how you view your actions while in combat?
I don't think so.
Mhm.
No. You either choose to be here or you don't.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you either believe in the cause and
Mhm.
fight or you don't. So if you do, you come, and if you don't, you don't.
Mhm.
So I think that's about it, really.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything nuanced, like when you're actually in the trench,
Mhm.
that is playing out.
In that trenches.
Unless you have unless someone's told you something different, like missing. But
No, I mean, I've heard, I think everything different from every different, everybody has their own individual experience of fighting here. It can be really different. I think for a lot of people, though, they've said that this kind of gives them some validation of, if you spent your whole life being a soldier and training to do this, now you get to put it to a cause and actually help.
absolutely, yeah.
Um, so with Rogan, you said you're either with military veterans from another military, or with people who had substantial experience already with Ukraine. That's different from many of the other foreign teams here. There's a lot of brand new people. What are your thoughts on people who have no experience at all fighting wars and would like to at this point come to fight for Ukraine?
I think the best thing is to get military training from whatever country you're from
Mhm.
before you show up, especially now.
Yeah.
It's got more and more dangerous. It's not got easier.
Mhm.
It's only got harder. And the drone threat especially, I think is just insane. So yeah, if you just don't know what you're doing, you just do not belong on the battlefield. You're just gonna become a casualty, and then you've got to be carried out like I had to be carried out. You're just a liability. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trained and I was a liability.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so if you got no training, you don't really do it, then even worse.
I think this is a lot of the injuries and deaths have been unfortunately come from having to rescue someone who's injured in the battlefield. The Russians
Right.
target that.
Yeah, no, that 100% happens. Yeah.
When you say it's become more dangerous now, can you say more about what has changed?
Um, I just there's probably a lot of things I don't even know
Yeah.
behind the scenes, whether or not like China, Iran, whoever's just giving the Russians more drones,
Yeah.
or I don't have any statistics
Mhm.
or evidence to. I'm just giving you opinion and
Yeah.
thoughts, you know. And really, the reason I say it is because of the feedback I got from my guys while I've been gone.
Yeah.
So they were still going out on missions, and they're just like, it's just getting insane. You can't even maneuver because we're an assault team. Technically,
Yeah.
we're supposed to be able to go assault trenches, but you can't. You can't even get to the
Mhm.
trenches because of the drone threat or whatever.
Mhm.
You know.
This is matching what everybody has told me, that there's just
Okay.
more drones than ever before
Yeah.
now. And I think I have yet to hear from anybody of, what works best to contain the threat. I'm hoping, hoping that somebody will be able to tell me. Um, how do you think choosing to fight here has changed your life? What's different now versus?
Good question. Good question. Not sure I've thought it through
Yeah.
enough. It's given me purpose and something to be involved with bigger than me. I thought I was done with the military, so
Mhm.
I feel honored to have been part of Rogue Team, be part
Yeah.
of the Legion under Gurr, and just like have these experiences that I never would have. So I feel like my life is richer for it. I've met some incredible people, like I said, like absolute legends, heroes,
Mhm.
just incredible people. The things that they do just blows my mind. So just to be able to be a witness
Yeah.
to that, I think it makes me a more rounded person to have experienced these things. But yeah, that's a tricky one to answer.
Yeah. I would have a hard time with it too, because it would require me to do a lot of thinking.
Yeah, I don't know if I fully processed
Yeah.
or am out the other side yet necessarily because we're still here.
Yeah.
You know?
I have a hard time when people ask me, how do you feel about certain things I did? And like, I don't think I've been working so hard. I don't think I've taken the time to process
Process it.
anything. Yeah, that's decades from now. We'll do
Yeah,
that.
I think part of the answer for me is like I'm telling you about Tommy. Like I
Yeah.
consider Tommy to have saved my life,
Mhm.
and like even like we wear these to sort of remember guys, right?
Mhm.
So this one says at the very bottom, the last line is just to repay our debt, we live.
Mhm.
So I sort of have that in my mind about how I should conduct myself in
Yeah.
life after war and after Ukraine is like
Mhm.
I sort of have this debt to Tommy, if you will, that
Mhm.
he doesn't get to go on
Yeah.
and have the greatest life or whatever, but I still have an opportunity to do things and like I said, be creative.
Yeah.
Like a lot of war is obviously destructive, but at at my heart, I'm a creative,
Yeah.
not bent on destruction. So I want to create things. So
Yeah.
as long as I'm still breathing, then I'm gonna find creative outlets to,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah, I think it's a tough thing for anybody who fought here or who's working in a role like mine, where we're working very closely with you. We lose a lot of people. Sometimes, I check the list of the people I've worked with or known very well, and it's just a growing list. Um, how do you think that affects you and everyone else at, a young age that people are losing their best friends and lots of them?
Yeah, it's gonna screw them up.
Yeah.
Some of them. Yeah. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
a lot of guys turn to the drink.
Yeah.
There's a lot of heavy drinking happens
Mhm.
to medicate that stuff. And Ukraine itself, if this war ends and all these guys return from the
Yeah.
front, I can't even imagine the problems they're gonna have socially with all these guys that have PTSD and anger
Yeah.
issues and
I've seen especially the anger issues come out in a lot of people, and it's tough because in some ways I've gotten angry before sometimes too. It's really easy, especially to get angry at people just living a regular life, and things will trigger you that
Yep.
will not, never make sense to them of why you are upset.
Yeah, sure.
What do you think in terms of the support that the foreign fighters here will need going forward? We mentioned some of the PTSD, drinking, how can those be addressed? Any ideas?
I think it'd be nice if whatever country you're from recognizes Ukrainian veterans for what they're contributing, even though, fine, on paper, our countries can't send troops here,
Yeah.
we can't admit to really being involved. At the end of the day, your citizens are involved.
Yeah,
And you should still care about them and want the best for them because they're defending
yeah,
Western freedom,
Mhm.
Western values, whether you sent them or not.
I-
You know?
I find it interesting too, especially for Americans, because we have sent so much equipment here, more equipment to Ukraine than has ever been given to any country. But what every veteran tells me is that unless there's a US veteran trained in how to use some of that equipment, it's useless. And so we're essentially reliant on US veterans being here unofficially, but to make sure that that's effective, but then also not recognizing that that service is essential.
Yeah, or recognizing the men themselves.
Yeah.
Or women.
Yeah. Um, yeah. There's a few women.
No, there is.
Yeah,
That's
there
why I
are,
say it.
yeah.
Yeah.
What, in terms of the US, well, I guess you've got two countries that we from, really. Do you think they could be doing more to support Ukraine?
Well, of course, they could always do more,
Yeah.
but whether or not they should or how they
Mhm.
should, like, those are questions that are hard for me to know.
Yeah.
I always say it this way, the war will go according to American will. If we actually have the will to beat Russia or
Yeah.
defend Ukraine, that's the way it'll go.
Mhm.
If we lose that will, then Ukraine will fall,
Yeah.
so to speak.
Mhm.
So I think of it that way. I also, in my mind, think if we actually had boots on the ground, if America was legitimately involved and we're like, all right, we're at war with Russia, and we came to Ukraine, we would roll through them in
Mhm.
days, weeks, like
Mhm.
it'd just be like game over.
Yeah.
But we don't do that.
Mhm. Even the Air Force, just
Oh,
want it.
that's why.
Yeah.
Because we'd have air superiority. And it'd just be
Mhm.
a game changer. That Ukraine is not equipped or experienced in the way that we are to be able to do that.
Mhm.
But they get closer, they inch their way closer with all the help, and especially with guys that come over here that
Mhm.
have all this experience and expertise, and they bring NATO knowledge to technically a Soviet-minded
Mhm.
military
Yeah.
to sort of educate them on, hey,
Mhm.
let's take this up a notch. But
Mhm.
it's a slow process, unfortunately.
It's not easy to change the whole culture of the military.
Because the Ukrainian military, unfortunately, still a lot of the older guys are Soviet trained,
Yeah.
Soviet minded, and so a lot of times the Westerns clash. It's
Yeah.
like a different,
Mhm.
way of thinking about war and fighting and preserving the life of your guys. Like you see it with Russia, they would just send waves of guys
Yeah.
to their deaths. They don't care, and so Ukraine command sort of had to learn to adjust that that's not how they should do things.
Yeah. Yeah, and I have heard that criticism from quite a lot of foreigners of saying, we're being sent on missions where there's no purpose to the mission, or this is too reckless, too dangerous, given what the objective
Yeah.
is.
The first missions I was involved was crossing the Dnipro in inflatable boats to take back the nuclear power plant at Zaporizhia, and could never pull it off. They could never
Mhm.
coordinate, like hundreds of boats. Like
Mhm.
it was a suicide mission.
Yeah.
Like looking back on it now, I'm like, what was I thinking getting in
Yeah.
that boat to begin with? But you just kind of go along with it. If your team's doing it, okay, I'm not going to
Yeah.
be the one not to do it. But yeah, we saw it then with the mission planning, the conflict between, Western leaders versus the Ukrainian
Yeah,
command at the time.
so I know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe foreign soldiers do have the ability, they don't have to follow orders, they don't have to, correct? They can decline missions.
It collectively, so for example, rogue teams ran by Dave,
Yes.
who's a Western.
Mhm.
So Dave is involved in the planning at this point
Mhm.
of any mission that rogue team's going to do.
Yeah.
So there's not really going to be anyone telling him, hey, you need to go do this,
Yeah,
to the point where he can say no or be involved in the planning process to where it's not working that way, at least for us.
mhm.
But yeah, there's been times when people refuse to go on mission, and
Yeah.
there can be consequences, like they'll kick you out.
Yeah,
So to some degree, yeah, no one's gonna put you up against the wall and shoot you for not doing what you're asked.
Yeah.
So you do have some autonomy to say no to things.
Mhm.
For the most part, if your team's doing it and you're genuinely part of the team,
you do it.
you're gonna do it. If Dave's going that way, I'm going that way.
Yeah.
That's how everyone else in the team's
Mhm.
gonna feel, because then you trust in the mission planning that he was involved in.
Yeah,
But I know that's not for every unit or every circumstance, you know?
yeah, yeah. And I have encountered some people who've been kicked out for refusing missions.
Yeah.
And it does happen.
It does happen.
Um, if there are people who watch this and are maybe military veteran or medical training, have the skills that are needed in Ukraine, and they want to go do what you did, what's the path they should take? What should they do?
I believe they can reach out to the Legion on the website, right? At
Yes.
least that's how I did it.
Mhm.
And just start that conversation there. Sometimes they're slow to respond,
Mhm.
but I know there's a shortage of personnel, so they need all the help they can get.
Mhm.
Um, I don't particularly want it on my conscience that I told anyone they should go, because it's dangerous as hell.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a tough thing too, because with the flights program that we have flown some people to Ukraine who have later been killed or been seriously injured. And all of them are people, they reached out to us, they wanted to go. They're all military veterans or occasionally it's been paramedic, EMT kind of training. But they're willingly going to do this. However, I think for everybody involved, there is always just a touch of, I helped somebody go do something that had serious consequences for them.
I think anyone who comes though has to have already accepted their own
Yeah.
death.
Mhm.
Like you just have to have already decided I'm okay with not
Yeah.
going home. Otherwise, just don't come.
Yeah.
You anyone who is a veteran has probably already been
Mhm.
deployed, has already been down that thought process and understands that thinking.
Yeah.
And so no one else should ever feel guilty. They make the decision to come.
Mhm.
It's their choice. They know the risks.
Mhm.
That's why I never twist anyone's arm to come.
Yeah.
I don't want it in my
Mhm.
conscience, but if they genuinely by themselves make the decision to come
Yeah.
and something happens to them, I don't think they're gonna hold, if they're looking down from heaven with
Yeah.
against anyone
Mhm.
and be like, well, it's your fault. I go, no,
Mhm.
they're not gonna do that. They're, hopefully mature enough to be responsible for their own decisions.
Yeah, yeah, and I think most people I've encountered actually are too, like they know the risks, they're well aware. Some people have even had, difficult conversations with me saying if something happens, here's, people to reach out to kind of thing, so that they have that in place. Um, for families at home though, it's a tough thing to have you guys come over here to fight, away from home for a long time. Many of you have family, spouses or children. What was it like for you to tell your family that you're coming here
So I'm divorced, but I got two kids.
Mhm.
So the hardest thing was, you know, letting them know
Yeah.
I was coming, especially for my eldest daughter,
Mhm.
because she really struggled when I was in the US Army.
Yeah,
And she remembers all that experience. So for her, me coming was sort of reopening old wounds
Yeah.
and trauma, and we divorced right after I was served in the military. So yeah, she's dealt with a lot of trauma herself from
Yeah.
that, and I feel, responsible for that. And so for me, coming here, coming back, it sort of reopens some of those wounds.
Mhm.
It's quite tricky. Yeah.
that's really tough.
Yeah. So I think it's obviously going to be hard on my parents too, but there's somewhat, I've always been, I live in a different country. I'm
Yeah.
sort of always just followed my own path
Mhm.
anyway. So they sort of accept, okay, that's just Mark
Yeah.
doing his thing. That's the way he is, but I know it's still hard. Like most of my friends are like, don't go, don't go. No one, there's not very many people like, oh, that's great, you're going. Most people
Yeah.
are like, don't go, that you get a lot of resistance. It's
Mhm.
not like when I was in the US Army.
Yeah.
And also when you come home, when we came back from deployment, like all the wives and families and kids are like, they're waiting for us. It's
Yeah.
like a big parade almost, and like music and excitement. When you come back from Ukraine, it's just you on
Yeah.
a plane, civilian,
By yourself.
by
Yeah.
yourself, very alone, nobody
Mhm.
cares, nobody knows. And you get home to people living their civilian lives, and most of them don't care, and most of them don't ask questions.
Yeah. Or sometimes they might ask kind of offensive questions.
Could do, yeah, sometimes.
No, I've seen this, June, with people we've flown home. It's been quite common that they've really struggled afterwards because they had home alone.
Absolutely.
There's no support systems in place.
And in the States, especially the problem with the polarization in politics. So now you've got this real anti-Ukraine support movement just because of, you know, whichever party you're supporting, and just with politics like kills me.
Yeah,
So I'm just like, you idiots, don't you realize what we're up against? This
Yeah.
affects all of us.
yeah,
This isn't a political divide of Republican,
Mhm.
Democrat, like,
mhm. Yeah, so that is an interesting challenge too, because a lot of people I've fought in Ukraine, let's just say that they don't have political views that align with mine very well. There's some interesting views out there. Some of them I would say might be, more on the more right-wing side, however they're fighting here. And this is a war where I think maybe for the first time ever in the US, it's more women that support the war effort here and more liberal leaning people, kind of like myself. But the people who actually are fighting here, I wouldn't categorize them mostly in that.
true. The military is usually quite,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I've encountered a few, but it's interesting. I've, encountered people like we have nothing in common just in general, but I'm just very aligned. And other people you think would be aligned who are not aligned at all. Is that something that affects team dynamics here at all? Of you guys are coming in from really different backgrounds.
it can if you got people with strong enough
Yeah.
personalities. It is interesting because you do sort of learn where everybody lands, and you
Yeah.
sort of get a feel. Well,
Mhm.
mostly for the most outspoken ones, but you sort of know, oh man, that he's super right wing. Or
Yeah, yeah,
so you sort of identify them, but everyone for the most part just gets on with it.
yeah.
I haven't really seen guys falling out over politics.
Mhm,
I guess it could happen. I'm sure it has happened, but
mhm.
I at least haven't experienced it to where it's been a problem for
Yeah.
team dynamics. And I think again, most people are coming out of previous military, have already been around,
Yeah.
and they've already developed sort of similar thinking maybe in their politics.
Yeah.
So when you get here, it sort of filters through those same
Mhm.
attitudes,
Mhm.
come through again.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, there's definitely some common themes.
Yeah.
But I also understand if you've got common life experiences, that's how you get there. What do you think the biggest challenge has been just in your entire journey so far of coming here multiple times, being injured, and fighting here? What was the toughest part?
That's a good question. Um, I think what I was telling you about my daughter was hard, because that's the thing I care about the most. So to in some way upset her, I remember that was pretty difficult
Yeah,
to deal with, and I was pretty bummed out at the time, um, and had to, really talk
Mhm.
through with her. Um, that was hard. I hated the boat missions because I'm
Mhm.
not a strong swimmer. I just thought I was going to drown.
I have never heard anyone say good things about the boat missions here.
No.
No, it always just.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
It was insanity.
Mhm.
But yeah, obviously losing Tommy's a big deal. Or the biggest deal probably out of all of it, because he was,
Yeah,
my close friend. So yeah, losing him is obviously not easy. But
yeah,
again, I sort of fall back on he came here by choice. He was the man of the hour for me
yeah,
in that battle, and I think he served honorably,
yeah.
and he was a hero as far as I'm concerned.
Mhm,
So yeah, I think he went out on a high note
mhm.
for where he was at in life. So I'm proud of him, and I know his parents are
Yeah,
as well.
I think that's all you can really ask. But this was a really fascinating conversation. really, really interesting. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah,
to
You're
go
very
through
good
it.
at the questions.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
Get this thing going.
Yeah. I'm tripping you up sometimes.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
man, making me think.
Yeah. No, that's good. We got to some deep places. No, but I think it's really insightful, really helpful to people to understand what it's actually really like to be here. And, for this.
I hope it helps.
Okay, and so we can turn it off.